Hey geeks, it's Minx. So I told you guys in our Game of Thrones video that I would be keeping you guys up to date on how I was doing with the books because I do have the current 5 books that are out right now. I'm looking at getting some of the side books, but I've finally done it. I have finally finished Book 1, Game of Thrones. Holy shit. The sad part is I'm probably not going to make it through all of the books before Season 5 starts and we start doing our reviews. Because, for the simple fact that this is probably the shortest, one of the shorter ones. And it took me like 6 months. Granted, part of that was because I think I screwed myself and by watching the show first. Because straight up, the Book 1 and Season 1 are almost verbatim. So it was hard for me to read stuff that I had already seen on the screen. But I will say this, I mean, that's a testament to how well George R.R. Martin writes. He is a master of the language, because majority of the dialogue in Season 1 is straight from the book, like, is literally, like, verbatim from the book. Like, some of these scenes were just like, wow, I totally watched that whole thing already. So it was really easy for me to see in my head. There were a few differences, and it was really minor stuff. There was a couple of things that I think they probably could have put in the show, and it would have only been, like, maybe a minute or two added on. And I think it would have helped. And for anyone who hasn't read the books, spoiler, because I'm totally going to talk about this right now and give a little bit away. There's like a scene, we know in the show when Sam is up at the wall and becomes friends with Jon and Gren and Pip, and they're supposed to graduate because a new batch of people is coming up. And in the books, they weren't planning on graduating Sam, and Jon actually goes to Maester Aemon and is like, you have to convince him to graduate him, you have to take him on as a steward, you know, he would be excellent for this, and this reason, you know, he will be perfect steward for you, he can read, he can write, he's super smart, I mean, he can do anything you need him to do. You know, you have to do it because if you don't, he's going to end up getting killed. You know, and the very next day, he finds out that, you know, they are graduating Sam. I think that was a scene they totally could have left in the show, because I don't remember that being in the show at all. I mean, it could have been, but I don't think it was, because it's later in the book. And I think by then they were starting to kind of shorten some of the scenes. I think it could have been left in because I think it would have shown bits of Jon. It's better characterization, I think, of an example of how he is kind of a leader for this rat pack of misfits, and why Mormont probably picked him as his personal steward. To groom him for leadership. I think it shows, you know, that it's already there. You know, it just needs to be, you know, I don't know, channeled in the right direction. And some of the other scenes that were just a little more in-depth. One thing I did notice is that the Catelyn in the book is a lot more hardcore than the Catelyn in the show. Like, the Catelyn in the show seems kind of weak, you know, kind of bitchy and kind of weak-willed, like, oh, my son, oh, you know, oh, my, you know, everything's just falling apart, and I'm just gonna do this, and whereas, like, in the book, she's definitely she seems like a lot stronger of a character so far. And I give George R.R. Martin props. He writes some strong female characters, and that's just book one. Like, I haven't even gotten really into the nitty gritty yet. But so far, so good. I give it. I wish I would have actually found this back when I was reading epics. Epic book series is like, the big volumes, like the Dragon Riders of Pern series and stuff like that. I mean, this would have been a good one to add to it. I have kind of started reading Clash of Kings, which is this one. Now, here's a sizing difference. I hope I can make it through this faster than 6 months, because this is about the size of the Game of Thrones, right? This is the size of Clash of Kings. It's like twice the size. Like, look at this. Look at this shit. It's bigger. It's definitely bigger. And it's thicker. And all the other books are about this size or bigger. And I'm just like, fuck. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this before the season. I'm gonna try. I'm still trying. I'm not giving up. But it all depends. I think it'll all depend on how much is different in the books. I know now that I'm gonna be beginning book 2. I know that season 2 is where they start to diverge a bit in the show. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, finally made it through book 1. About to start book 2. I want to see how close the show got to the books. So far, season 1 to book 1 ratio is probably one of the closest things I've seen to something that I've read. You can't get much more verbatim, and one of the closest things like I remember to being towards a book was probably like the first 2 Harry Potter movies. They were fairly close to the book for a movie, and this is closer. This is definitely closer, book 1 to season 1. So, I mean, granted, yeah, they had a hell of a lot more time, but I mean, even the dialogue is practically verbatim, and I know that for, like, Harry Potter, they changed dialogue even, so super stoked, super excited. I know, Clash of Kings has to do with the War of the Five Kings, predominantly, so that'll be exciting. We'll get to see how that goes. Let's see, in Clash of Kings, we start with whose point of view? That's one thing also I should probably mention. For anyone who hasn't read the books, George R.R. Martin writes it in a point of view of a different character every chapter. Each book has a certain amount of characters that it covers, and it'll bounce back and forth between them. Other books I've read that were written like that, I found them really hard to follow, mostly because I would start getting invested, like emotionally invested in a character, and then it would jump to a different character, and I'd lose that connection up until I get to a character that is familiar from like a past book or something. I did not have that issue with Game of Thrones. His transitions are super smooth, and it literally feels like I'm just jumping scenes to a different character. The other books I read, it had things from different points of views, but it was like characters involved in the same scene, the same general area, and that kind of threw me off a lot. But the way he does it, I mean, he very deliberately picks characters who are not necessarily sitting right next to each other in the same room watching the same thing go down. And I think that helps a lot, because it's like, okay, I get to see what's going on here, and then I get to see what's going on over here, but he develops that in each chapter, and I think that's awesome. His dialogue is amazing. His descriptions are great, without being overly done, like overly gory, overly sexualized, overly disgusting, So far, the female characters are quite strong and quite striking and different. So are the male characters, the kids. A lot of it's very believable. And as someone who enjoys history and historical stuff. I'm catching the historical references and similarities to past events that really happened in our world. So I'm enjoying it thoroughly now that I've finally gotten through the first book. Like I said, it took hitting a point that wasn't a thing that I saw in the show to really, okay, that wasn't something I've seen, so I can read this now. So I hope more of that continues in Clash of Kings. Very, very big, thick book with tiny, very tiny print. Like, this sucker is way too goddamn long. Let's see, we start with, who did we start with? After the prologue, he's got a prologue in each one too, which was like, hello, bonus chapter. Let's see, looks like, because I'm pretty sure that's the prologue, right there. God, that's long. Prologue, yeah, that is a long prologue. Wow, it's a lot longer than I thought. Starts off with Arya. And who are we ending with in this one? And ending with Bran, looks like. So we begin with the sister and end with a brother. Game of Thrones. After the prologue started with Bran and ended with Daenerys. So, we'll see what happens. I also, other good news, which will come in handy for my solo segment when we talk about stories, is, I ordered the World of Ice and Fire, so I'm just waiting on that to arrive, and we'll be able to, I'll actually be able to share some, little mini side stories, things that a lot of people haven't done yet. Everyone always focuses on the Targaryens, which is awesome, because I enjoy that family lineage, because it's fucking nuts. But I think I'm going to check out some of the other stuff, maybe some Baratheon stuff, or some Lannister shit, or, stuff that maybe hasn't been done, maybe some of the other houses, other than, like, the main three everyone talks about. So, we'll see what happens, but yeah, so far so good. I'll let you know how I'm doing on Clash of Kings. I kind of started reading the prologue, but and I'm like, wow, this wasn't in the show, so so far so good. So let's hope I can keep it up. Thanks, geeks. See you later.